Michael Jordan's old coach died broke. What MJ secretly did at the funeral had everyone crying. Michael Jordan hadn't set foot in Wilmington in over a decade. His jet touched down just after dawn, unnoticed and unannounced. He wore a baseball cap pulled low and sunglasses, not to hide from the world. He simply wasn't in the mood for it. The text had come late the night before, from Charles, an old high school teammate. Coach Grizz passed. Funeral Sunday. He died with nothing. No details. No drama. Just the fact. Michael hadn't thought about Coach Grissom in a while. Don Grissom wasn't the loudest man, and he sure wasn't the most decorated. But he'd been the first man to call Michael into his office and say the words, "You're not just good, Mike. You're different." Most coaches yelled. Grizz just watched. He saw through bluster and teenage arrogance. He never begged anyone to care. And maybe that's why most didn't. But he always knew which kid was hiding pain behind cockiness. He spotted that in Michael a mile away. Now he was gone. Alone. No family left. The trailer he lived in was already padlocked by the county, according to Charles. No assets, no pension, no funeral fund. Just a dusty recliner, a faded clipboard, and an unpaid power bill. Michael kept his head down as he slipped into the rental car and drove through the old streets. Things had changed, but not by much. The gas station still had that crooked sign. The diner still had peeling paint. The gym? It looked worse. He parked out front and got out. The place was locked, so he circled to the back where the door was always jammed, and sure enough, a hard pull opened it. Inside, the air was stale. Wooden bleachers creaked when he stepped. The court's paint was faded and chipped. The scoreboard didn't even light up. He walked to the center circle and stood there, remembering the drills. The suicides. The water breaks where Grizz refused to let them talk trash. He remembered the first time he dumped here. Not in front of a crowd, just Grizz, holding a stopwatch and nodding like he'd seen it coming. Michael sat on the edge of the court, hands folded. He could still hear Grizz's voice in that even tone, "You either get better or you get beat." Back then, Michael was angry a lot. About being cut, about feeling second best, about not being seen. But Grizz saw him. And he didn't just feed his ego, he challenged it. One time, Michael had skipped class, thinking basketball made him untouchable. Grizz benched him. No yelling, no speeches. Just sat him the hell down. Michael hated it, but he respected it. He stayed in the gym a while longer. Nobody interrupted. It was like the building itself knew it was morning. Later that afternoon, he drove to the funeral home. It wasn't even a proper one, just a church hall with folding chairs and a couple fans humming to beat the heat. There were maybe 15 people there. A few looked familiar. Most didn't. He took a seat in the back, quietly. No one made a scene. Maybe they weren't sure if it was really him, or maybe they figured now wasn't the time. The pastor spoke simply. Coach Don Grissom didn't have much, but he gave a lot. A few former players shared stories. A tall guy named Rob choked up talking about how Grizz paid his electric bill one winter when his mom got laid off. Another, Marcus, talked about how Grizz helped him apply to college, how he never even knew how to fill out an application until Grizz sat him down. One guy said Grizz fixed his bicycle every week just so he could make it to practice. And then came the hardest part. The pastor cleared his throat. There were no surviving family members. No estate. The county will cover the burial, but there's no fund for a headstone. If anyone feels moved, there's a small donation box near the door. Michael sat still. The box sat on a table next to a bouquet of wildflowers and a printed picture of Grizz, one from the mid-90s, standing courtside with a whistle around his neck. The service wrapped. People mingled. No one made a speech out of it. It wasn't that kind of crowd. Michael stood and made his way to the front slowly. A few eyes turned. One man whispered, "Is that who I think it is?" Michael walked to the photo, looked at it for a long time, then turned to the pastor. "You got a second?" he asked quietly. The pastor nodded and led him to a small office. "I didn't come to speak or make this about me," Michael said. "I just needed to show up." The pastor sat down, studying him. "He always talked about you. Not in a bragging way. Just proud." Michael pulled an envelope from his inside pocket. "This should cover everything, debts, burial, whatever's needed. The rest? Use it for the gym. Fix it up." The pastor took the envelope slowly. It felt heavy even though it wasn't. "That gym?" Michael nodded. "It's where he built men. Not just players." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "One more thing," he added. "Put his name on that court. Not mine." The pastor smiled softly. "We will." Michael left the office and slipped out the side exit. He didn't wait for thanks. Didn't talk to anyone else. The sun was already dropping low, casting long shadows across the churchyard. He got in his car and sat for a moment before turning the key. In the rearview mirror, the town still looked small. But in that moment, it carried the weight of everything. He drove away, not looking back. But everyone else there would never forget who had quietly walked in and what he'd left behind. Word started to spread by Monday. Not through press releases or headlines, just whispers. Someone's cousin had been at the funeral. Someone's aunt swore she saw him slip in the side door. Others didn't believe it. But the church's pastor, Reverend Harlan, confirmed it quietly to a few who asked. Yes. Michael Jordan was there. He didn't want attention. He came to honor a man who meant something. By midweek, the envelope was all anyone talked about behind closed doors. Inside, along with a check for $500,000, was a handwritten note in simple block letters. Rebuild the gym. Clear any debts he left behind. And put his name on the court. Grissom Court. No signature. Just the initials, MJ. The pastor used the funds exactly as asked. A small portion went to handle the burial with dignity, no county-paid grave this time. Coach Grissom was laid to rest under a sturdy oak near the town's edge with a headstone that simply read, Don Grizz Grissom. Coach, mentor, man of quiet impact. The rest went toward the gym. The school board had never budgeted anything for it. Not in years. Leaky roof, busted lights, warped floorboards, no one had cared. But now, suddenly, plans were being drawn, trucks scheduled. People started volunteering, some because they heard about Jordan, others because they remembered what Grizz had meant to them when they were just angry, lost kids trying to make a team. In the middle of all this, a young teacher named Rachel Bell stepped forward. She'd never met Grizz but had recently been hired as the school's first female head coach. She found the letter taped to her office door the day after the funeral. It wasn't signed. It read, He believed in potential. So don't coach for wins, coach for life. Rachel made it her mission to oversee the rebuild. She worked with contractors, drew up drills for a new team, and pushed for every decision to honor Grizz's values, discipline, respect, no shortcuts. Meanwhile, Michael kept quiet. No statements. No media. Not even a phone call to confirm the money had arrived. He didn't need to. The town knew. But not everyone was impressed. At a school board meeting, one member asked, why didn't he do this while Grizz was alive? Rachel had to bite her tongue. Another parent responded instead. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe none of us cared enough to check in until it was too late. The silence in that room said more than any argument could. A few weeks later, the gym's renovation began. The old floor was ripped out. The leaking roof patched. New bleachers installed. But the most important change came at center court, a bold black paint job, outlined in red, with 5 simple words, Grissom Court, where legends begin. On opening day, they held a quiet rededication ceremony. No banners, no fireworks. Just former players, students, parents, and local folks who remembered what that gym used to be. There was an empty chair in the front row. No one said anything about it, but they all knew who it was for. The ceremony started with the national anthem, followed by Rachel stepping to center court. She kept it short. He never wanted praise. He just wanted to shape boys into men. And now, we get to carry that on. A few clapped. Some cried. Most stood in silence, staring at the name painted across the floor like it had always been there. After the ceremony, kids poured onto the court, some bouncing balls, others running laps. It wasn't perfect yet, but it felt alive again. A kid named Trey caught Rachel's eye. He was tall, clumsy, and a little too quiet for a 10th grader. Reminded her of the stories she'd heard about Jordan back then, frustrated, raw, burning for something but not knowing how to reach it. She called him over. "You ever think about joining the team?" He shrugged. "I'm not that good." Rachel smirked. Neither was he, at first. "Show up Monday. We'll see what happens." He walked away, but there was something different in his eyes now. A flicker of belief. Back in Chicago, MJ sat in his private office, watching an old VHS tape. It was a recording from decades ago. Grainy footage of a high school game. A younger version of himself, skinnier, rougher, missing more shots than he made. On the sideline stood Grizz, arms crossed, eyes locked on the court, not yelling, not pacing. Just watching, believing. He paused the tape. So many had come and gone. Coaches with strategies, handlers with advice, sponsors with contracts. But none of them had given him what Grizz had, space to fail, and the belief that he'd figure it out if he didn't quit. He leaned back, thinking about the funeral, about that gym, about the kid who would walk in and see Grissom Court every day. He didn't need to be there for that. He'd already said what he needed to. In the following weeks, footage of the new court leaked onto social media. A student posted a TikTok showing the transformation. The video went viral. But Michael never liked or commented. That wasn't the point. Then, one day, a letter arrived at his office. Handwritten. From Rachel. It read, "You gave us the gift of remembering what coaching should be. I just thought you should know, there's a kid here who reminds me of your story. He stays late. He asks questions. He believes in more than just points on a board. I think Coach Grizz would have been proud. Thanks for making sure his name wasn't forgotten." Michael folded the letter, set it aside, and pulled out a pen. He jotted a note, short and plain, the same way Grizz would have done it. He slipped it in an envelope, addressed it to Rachel, and sealed it. On the back, he wrote, "Keep building. That's the real scoreboard. MJ." The following season started slow. Rachel's new team struggled to find rhythm. The players were raw, some still learning the basics, others dealing with things off the court, part-time jobs, broken homes, the usual weight small-town kids carried. But something had changed. They stayed late after practice. They started watching film. They began to believe in something bigger than just the scoreboard. The court wasn't just renovated, it was respected now. You didn't curse on Grissom Court. You didn't quit halfway through drills. You didn't leave a teammate behind. The gym had become more than a gym. It felt like Grizz was still there, quietly watching, expecting more. By mid-season, the team began winning. Not by blowouts, but by grinding out close games, outworking teams that had better funding, newer uniforms, and full trophy cases. Word started spreading across the district. Wilmington's back. At one game, right before tip-off, the crowd stirred. A few heads turned. Rachel glanced toward the bleachers. Michael Jordan had just walked in. No entourage. Just a black jacket, jeans, and a familiar presence. He didn't sit courtside. He found a spot in the corner, a few rows up, beside an older man who didn't even recognize him at first. They talked quietly between plays. MJ wasn't there to be seen, he was there to watch. Rachel caught Trey sneaking glances toward the bleachers. At halftime, she pulled him aside. "He's not here for autographs," she said. Trey nodded, nerves all over his face. "I know. But it's him." Rachel leaned in. "So play the way Coach Grizz would want you to. With heart." Trey didn't say a word. But when the second half started, he moved differently, faster, sharper. He grabbed rebounds, called plays, lifted teammates up. When the final buzzer sounded, Wilmington had won by 2. The crowd roared. But MJ didn't stand or wave. He just smiled to himself. As the gym cleared, Rachel made her way up the bleachers. She reached him just as he was about to leave. "Didn't expect you," she said. "I didn't expect to come," he replied. She paused. "That kid out there, Trey, he's the real deal." MJ nodded. "He's got something. Not polished, but it's there." Rachel tilted her head. "Just like someone else once was." They stood in silence for a moment. MJ glanced around the gym. "You did this right," he said. "Not flashy. Just honest." Rachel looked at the court. "We just followed the blueprint. Coach Grizz's way." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Last thing. I wasn't sure if I'd give it to you or not." She unfolded it. It was a check, made out to the school. "For a scholarship fund. Only for kids who hustle," he said. "No handlers. No hype." Rachel looked up. "What should we call it?" Michael looked back toward the painted name on the floor. "Call it the Grissom Grant." He left without another word. Weeks later, the fund was announced quietly. No press release. Just a simple flyer taped to the gym door. "Grissom Grant, for players who lead with effort. Apply through Coach Bell." The school board approved it with no objection. They knew by now to trust Rachel's direction. The gym became the heart of the school again, hosting tournaments, drawing crowds, and building something deeper than a win-loss record. Trey became the first recipient. He didn't tell anyone, not even his mom. But the day he got the letter, he stayed an hour after practice alone, just running drills. When Rachel asked why, he said, "Feels wrong to celebrate. I still got work to do." MJ never returned again. Not publicly. But a package showed up a few months later, sent directly to the school office. Inside were 2 items. 1, a pair of Air Jordan 1s, signed on the side with the words "Earn It." 2, a laminated photo of Coach Grizz standing beside a young MJ in his high school jersey, both smiling like it was just another Tuesday. Rachel hung the photo above the gym entrance. The shoes went in a glass case beside it. No spotlight, no alarm. Just a handwritten plaque, "For the man who built belief." Years passed. Wilmington's team didn't become a national powerhouse, but they stayed solid. They made playoffs, sent players to college, and became known for something rare: discipline, teamwork, and heart. The Grissom Grant grew with quiet donations. Alumni who had once been knuckleheads were now successful adults, quietly giving back because they remembered how much one coach had meant. Trey graduated and came back years later to volunteer. Eventually, he became Rachel's assistant coach. His first team had no stars. Just grinders. And he loved them for it. One rainy night, he found Rachel sitting alone in the gym office, looking at the old clipboard Grizz used to carry. "You ever think he knew?" Trey asked. "Knew what?" "How far all this would go?" Rachel shook her head. "No. But I think he hoped." Trey smiled. "I think he knew." Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, the lights above Grissom Court flickered once, then held steady. A few minutes later, Trey walked onto the court, bounced a ball once, and looked up. "Still watching, Coach," he said, almost to himself. There was no answer. But somehow, the silence felt like one. And from that small gem in North Carolina, something much bigger had been built, not just a court, not just a team, but a legacy. The kind that didn't need headlines. The kind that would never be forgotten.